Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Castlevania for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In this 1987 action platformer from Konami, you play as Simon Belmont, taking up the vampire-killing family business, cause Dracula is back-ula. Oh, that was bad. In Castlevania, you jump and whip your way through 6 spooky levels. Each one is a different part of Dracula's castle, broken up into linear platforming sections and culminating in a boss fight against some classic monster. Medusa, mummies, Frankenstein, the Grim Reaper, and a big bat. Not exactly a classic monster, but he brought chips and hummus, so he can hang. Upside down. Oh, that was bad too. Castlevania's gameplay is defined by a paradox, the most refined, clunky controls ever. Each input has a built-in delay and a set trajectory, so the actions are all about proper aim and precise timing. Jumping onto a moving platform? Well, you better aim before you do, because there's no changing your arc in midair, and there definitely aren't any friendly singing mermaids in the waters below. Just angry fishmen who breathe fire. I know, fire-breathing fish makes no sense, but there are plenty of equally confusing monsters in this game if you really think about it. Like, how does Medusa's snake hair work? If she catches a cold, do all the snakes start sneezing too? She'd be walking around with boogers in her hair all day. Anyway, this trademark input delay also extends to your default weapon, the whip. You have to premeditate each attack so it lands before an enemy gets to you, and when you take a hit, you get shoved backwards, usually into some bottomless pit. What a cheap way to do me in. Like I'm the villain in some children's movie that's willing to kill me off, but too shy to do anything other than imply it with a dramatic fall off the edge of a cliff or something. At least let me die with dignity, bleeding out on the dungeon floor and asking the mummy if I can borrow a bandage. There are sub-weapons too, like axes and knives and stuff, which you can get from whipping candlesticks around the castle. These are particularly helpful against the bosses. The graphics in Castlevania are iconic. The sprites leave a bit to be desired with their odd, clashing color palettes, but the backgrounds are awesome and more than make up for it. Somehow, each part of the castle is unique while maintaining consistent elements that make the game feel visually unified. But the music is the real star of the show. Konami put together one of the most beloved 8-bit soundtracks ever here, where all the stage and boss encounters are perfectly paired with an iconic chiptune. The sound effects are great too. Item pickup chimes are fun and arcadey, and it's pretty amazing how close taking damage sounds to the real-life noise you make when the front wheel of the shopping cart stalls out and you take a handlebar right to the gut. The most novel aspect of the game is how the controls bring an element of strategy to what would otherwise be a straightforward action platformer. And that's where the challenge comes into play, mastering the input delays and figuring out how to counter enemy patterns with them. I was able to handle the first 4 stages playing legit, thanks in part to past experience of slogging through them. But stage 5 is where I needed to start using save states. I've heard enough about Castlevania to know that level is brutal for 2 reasons. First is the dreaded hallway where you have to take out knights and dodge flying Medusa heads simultaneously. I do not have the multitasking skills for something like that. It's a blessing that cardiac muscles have involuntary contraction, because if I had to consciously pump my heart and breathe at the same time, I'd probably forget one and die. Second is the Grim Reaper boss fight, which is supposed to be near impossible unless you have the water bomb sub-weapon to stun lock him. And if you don't know what stun locking is, it's basically how I used to get rid of fruit flies by my compost bin. You just spray them with Lysol so they can't fly away. Take that, you gross little abominations. The save states really came in handy for the final Dracula fight though, since he has a second form. Classic vampire lore did not prepare me for the Count's head to fly off and turn into a big blue winged Sasquatch skeleton. But then again, I'm not one for scary movies and stuff, so maybe that's par for the course. My favorite part of Castlevania was nailing those perfectly timed attacks on tricky enemies. When you get acclimated to the whip mechanics, they just feel really satisfying. If I could change one thing though, I'd put a checkpoint before all the earlier boss battles like there is with the final Dracula fight. There were a lot of times where my health was already drained before facing off, so the whole fight was basically a wash from the outset. Almost like real life, where if I saw Frankenstein, I'd give up and die of a heart attack right then and there. Those involuntary cardiac muscles are great and all, but they can't save me from big spooky monsters. Overall, I'm glad I finally saw Castlevania through to the end, even by save scumming the last 2 levels. It really is a classic that deserves its praise as an NES staple and a killer first entry to a beloved franchise.